All right, so you're here with Scott Reiart and Dylan Provencher from the Path Real Estate team.
Hello.
We've got our November market watch. We just wanted to kind of do a bit of a year-end discussion with you guys about what we think is going on out there.
All right, let's get right into it. So anytime we look at these reports, I think the first thing that anyone jumps their attention to is what the average price ended up being, and particularly year over year for this month. So what's interesting about November is that the average price actually dipped 2% than it did from November 2016.
Which is unheard of.
That's
really.
not typically what you would expect to see in the month of November. So I think right away, people are going to sort of jump on that and jump to the conclusion that, it's a little bit of doom and gloom and prices are going down. But as always, there's more to the picture than just that average price number right there.
Well, and coupled with the fact that, it was already totally psychotic by now and will continue to be. It'll be difficult to compare apples to apples until really April of next year because of the fact that we had such a crazy spike early on.
That's a great point. Get used to seeing this, because what we're going to soon get into is those months that started this year, February, March, April, where we were seeing just explosive price growth. There's no way we're going to see that this year. So I think this is going to start to be a trend where you're going to see that average price start to dip down a bit month over month. But it doesn't mean prices are going down in general.
I agree completely. The other thing I'd say too is that when you talk globally about a balanced real estate market, we're talking about 6 months of inventory. So if nothing else got listed, then all the houses would basically sell off within 6 months. We're nowhere remotely close to a balanced market. It's still very favored to sellers. It's just a little bit less psychotic is sort of how I qualify it.
I agree. If we pick out some of the other stats too from this month, it's interesting. It tells a bigger picture. The first one I would point out is the home price composite benchmark index. I know that's a mouthful, but
yeah, and basically what that refers to is just the fact that we're eliminating the absolute highest sales and the absolute lowest sales. So really the band in the middle of all the most common sales.
It'd be like a poker game where you take out the high card and the low card. It would give you that sort of median price figure.
Yeah.
And what we saw there actually is that there was an increase of 8.4%. So there we're seeing an increase almost to double digits.
Perfect.
So again, you can always look at these numbers and you can sort of pick which one you want and tell a tale, but that is a more reliable one to look at. And in that one, we saw an increase. Another thing that jumps out is that if you look at the active listings for November 2017 versus November 2016, it increased by 110.6%. Can you imagine that? There were 110.6% more active listings this month than there were at the same month last year. That's a staggering number.
So we're seeing a ton more inventory.
Yeah, and that's a factor why we saw that the actual average price did go down, because what we've always seen, in my opinion, the number one factor that determines price growth is the supply versus demand.
Right.
Would you agree?
Of course, yeah.
One of the reasons why to start this year we saw such really crazy, unattainable price growth was that inventory levels were at historically low marks. So there was virtually nothing to buy. There were tons of buyers. Any house that hit the market was getting a ton of activity and selling way above the asking price. So
yeah,
go ahead.
And to be honest with you, from a real estate perspective, I'm actually happy for this market. This is going to allow great agents like us to shine through, and really you're going to need someone who really knows how to navigate this type of stuff. So I'm sort of welcoming a bit more of a balanced market for both our buyers and our sellers.
Yeah, and particularly to jump on that for buyers. I think all of this great price growth has always been great for people selling, but we always have to take into account that there are two sides to every transaction, the selling and the buying. So for buyers, if they're going to have market conditions next year where there's more inventory available to them, it's going to make it a little bit easier and a little bit more pleasant to buy something. You may find yourself not in competition.
Yeah.
You may find yourself being able to put a condition on your offer, condition on financing, condition on home inspection. That was something earlier in the year that was virtually impossible to do. Another stat we look at is that if you look at the average days on market for this month versus the same month last year, this month we had 24 versus 17 a year ago. So that's a full week longer that something sat on the market.
So it's a longer sales period. There's more listings. It's a bit closer to being balanced, but still not balanced.
As we know in the real estate market, a week, days really can be a lifetime. So if stuff's sitting around longer, again, it signals that buyers had a little bit more power behind them and more options. So this is something that I'm going to watch closely, because would be remiss if we didn't point out, though, that with the new mortgage stress test coming into effect as of January 1st, we know that there were a number of people that accelerated their plans to sell this year.
Right.
So I do think that this month is inflated a bit by that factor, but I'm also thinking that heading into next year, we are going to see more inventory.
So tons of good information. Wrap it all up for us, Scott. What do you think is going to happen in the new year?
What I think is going to happen in the new year? Well, let's look at it from both a buyer and seller perspective. For our buyers, we always say, be ready, okay? Particularly with this new stress test, if there is a chance that you're going to be impacted by it, you want to go out, get your pre-approval in place before year end.
Right.
Give yourself 60, 90, in some cases 120 days, so you can get out there and not be affected by what's going to happen.
Okay.
For sellers, I think, we're kind of going to go on two different paths here, but I actually think selling early in the year is going to be a good thing. I think that a lot of people, sellers, are going to be cautious because of some of these changes. I think they're going to wait a few months to see what shakes down.
Right.
So I think if you have a great house to sell, if you get it ready early in the year, you could find yourself in a situation where there's virtually no competition for your house that
Right.
week. So buyers are still going to be out there. They're going to be ready. They've had enough time to digest these changes. If you got a good house to sell, I think January could be a great month because there's not going to be much competition. You're going to have some buyers, and you could get yourself a really good result.
Awesome. Well, I think you wrapped it up with a bow, buddy. Thanks.